Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for today's program, Job Interview Mastery, an authentic approach to flexing your talent. Applying for your next big career opportunity requires a lot of work. You must reach out to your network, arrange informational meetings, talk to recruiters, and submit your resumes. Finally, you land the job interview. But what comes next? And this is led by Maureen Weisner, M.Ed, PCC, CPCC, the founder and managing partner of KICKSTART Your Transition. Named a top 10 executive coach by Women's Business Boston, she is a certified coach, consultant, and professional speaker who specializes in working with individuals in transition, typically involving career change, divorce, education, and other major work-life events. So all nearly 40 of us or so who are watching live and the many more that will watch the recording, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Maureen for joining us here today. And Maureen, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robert. I'm speechless. It sounds like alphabet soup. If I didn't know myself better, I'd say, wow, that's impressive. Thank you so much. Well, very happy to be here today. And in thinking about just the whole approach and how we look at the job search and the coincidence of this being Olympic time, it occurred to me that, there's something that's so clear about what we do when we're in the job performance space, that when you are looking for, you're competing, you're disciplined. And when you look at the Olympians, one said, and most of them probably echo the same, it's taking years of training for 4 minutes, 2 minutes, the difference in winning and not winning, the difference in competing, it's tremendous. The discipline that it takes to perform under pressure is outstanding. And so let's think of ourselves as Olympians in this job search process. Something interesting about Olympic competition and medals, and we make assumptions. Who's going to be the happiest there? We've got gold, silver, and bronze. Everybody knows that. And we think, well, okay, if we could see each other's hands right now, we'd say, okay, I think who would be the happiest of those medalists? And most people would say, it's got to be the gold medalist, absolutely, 100%. And who would be least happy? Well, my thought was it's probably the bronze medalist. It was actually the silver medalists. They have the least degree of happiness because they may have lost that gold medal by tenths of a second. Bronze medalists, very likely, they may be so thrilled that they made it over the gap and maybe by 1 second. So they're in the running and forever they'll be bronze medalists. But those silver medalists are thinking, oh, now I have to prepare. And of course, this is their lives. I may be preparing again to compete again for the gold medal the next time around. So now I'm thinking about 2028. Simone Biles, when she was interviewed the other day, said, please stop asking the next question to these Olympians, what's next for you? And when you're in the job search, it sometimes feels like, oh, Jane, are you still looking for something? Or John, are you still looking for something? Scooting back to the Olympics, there was an interview also. There's a young woman her parents were from China. They competed on a very high level, and it's table tennis, not ping pong. So I don't want to misspeak about that. And they competed at such a high level that they won all sorts of medals and competitions and so forth. So when they were able to come to the United States, and I believe she was age 10, they had her train, use their dining room table, turned it into a ping pong table tennis table when they were not using it for dining. And they worked hard with her, and she had coaches, and she's competed, and she's in her 20s at this point. And she is at the Olympics. So imagine the amount of work that she's done to do this. And when you think about ping pong, we all think, who hasn't played ping pong or table tennis, whatever you call it? So you sort of think, well, I could be pretty good at it. I may have won a number of matches. I'm not so bad. But imagine doing this to the extent that you do, that you are so competitive and that you can do it at this level. And the one thing that her parents have said to her is they just want her to get a job. So when somebody is competing at that level, somebody is so disciplined, somebody is so good at one thing, and then the feedback from your parents or anyone is, it's enough already, let's get a job. We're all in this space. where we can be stars. We can be stars in the job search process. And think about that, years of training. What are you going to put into your job search and for your interview? You've gotten to the interview. And what do we not want to do, folks? We don't want to turn it into a train wreck. We want to turn it into something where we can really, really promote ourselves in a way that's going to serve us to take us to the next place. And what is the next place? Getting to the interview means that you've had your resume screened. You've gone through some process. Now, this may be just a screening call. Either it's a Zoom call or phone call, but there are levels of interviews. And how you perform can mean a lot to take it to the next level. One of the things that's important, we've talked about networking, no doubt you've talked about networking. And as Robert said, Wednesday is really a networking day where you can seek out each other because everybody knows somebody who can help you in the next steps of getting a job, furthering your career, thinking about what's appropriate. Who do I know who could help you? 80% of positions are gained through introductions. Now, for many people, it could be your next door neighbor, it could be your brother-in-law, it could be somebody that you've met just in passing. Most likely it's going to be from second or third level kinds of introductions, because oftentimes people who know you very well start to screen out what you do, what you're good at, who you are, and they only see you as one thing. If you're in fact in a career transition, let's say you're in a profession or you were in a profession that is tightening right now, and there's a lot that goes into all of this, whether we think about the job market, whether we think about the tightening parts of it, whether we think about AI and how that's impacting whatever work you do. Now, the good news about AI is that it's eliminating a lot of stuff so that entry level is changing. The other good news about AI is that jobs that are in process now of being created are brand new in many cases. And in 5 or 10 years, young people who are in school will not, the jobs that they will be looking at are things that don't even exist right now. Different job titles, different ways to incorporate learning, and how you can take advantage of AI and ChatGPT and the free resources that are available online. So again, take advantage of it. So now we're out of the Olympics, but we're thinking about, what's next? Where do I go? We don't want to make our job interview into a train wreck. And I'm just trying to be somewhat humorous here because there's a lot of attention that goes into this. There's a lot of anxiety that goes into it. If you've been in the job search for a while, you know it's discouraging. You don't want to be the person who is at home just popping out resumes or job applications. Or on LinkedIn, there was a piece recently about not putting open to work on your headshot, that can be discouraging, even though it feels like it may be encouraging to some people. Getting to the interview. How do you get to the interview? Well, one of the places that's really important is LinkedIn. I hope that your LinkedIn profile is up to date, that your headshot is up to date, that the information is up to date, that it can be eye-catching. It doesn't have to be so dramatic that you say, oh, this was done formally by somebody else, but you could. The importance of having a good LinkedIn profile or a solid LinkedIn profile is so that somebody can get just a touch at you. Recruiters are online. They say that it's not 24/7. They say maybe it's 5 days a week or 6 days a week, but that's completely untrue. And it's not just recruiters, it's hiring managers. There are incentives for people to make referrals in-house, so there can be financial referrals if you know somebody who works at the XYZ company. One of the best hints, I believe, is to create a list of the places that you would like to work, the companies that you'd like to work for, if that's your goal. Then look at their job boards, job titles that mesh for you. And there was an interesting piece about nursing recently, for example. And the traditional way that we think about nurses working in hospitals or clinics or offices and so forth can be very different if you move it into the corporate level, if you move it into large organizations. And now I'm not just talking about working at partners in their departments that are not in the clinical part of the hospital. But there are other ways that you can take something like nursing and bring it into corporate. So you could be a person that is working there and doing some of their screening for safety, for other ways that you can take your job skills and match it up with what the description of the job is. Then you're looking for, who do I know who's at that company? And if I don't know anybody directly, who do I know who knows somebody who's there? So I can get a good idea of who the interviewer is, how I can reach out. And once you have an interview established, you want to make sure that you know everything about that interviewer that you can. Not that you're stalking that person, because we don't recommend that, but finding out general information about that person. If you know more, for example, let's say you're on a Zoom interview and you see a guitar in the background. So you may say, well, that person could be a musician. That person could do this as a hobby. That could be something that we can engage in when we're in the interview process. So there are always ways to manage interviews and how to get to the next place. Okay. Planning ahead. That's what it's all about. Prepare, 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 prepare. You can't be prepared enough. Know what the company does. You want to be prepared with questions. You want to be also not being interviewed, but think about that you're also the interviewer. You want to find out what the culture is like, but not asking questions that are so open-ended that you aren't informed, but you are asking questions that are going to give you more information. And that doesn't mean how many vacation days, what's the 401k plan like, and all of the other benefits that might come to this. It's much more about education moving forward. If this were a successful match for us, what would it look like after 90 days, after 6 months? There are ways that you can formulate questions, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But planning ahead is really important. When you have the opportunity to interview in advance with a friend, you can do it, play it back on Zoom, do it with a friend, do it alone. Practice, because our words sometimes get tangled and what we're thinking doesn't always come out in the way that we imagine it is. Sometimes it gets garbled. Sometimes we say things in a way that isn't intentional and it could be more precise. We want to make sure that we know as much as possible about what our next steps are going to be. A great way to practice is to do it in front of a mirror, because many of us don't see what our facial expressions are. That's only on a phone interview. So we don't want to have anything above our screens other than maybe some Post-its with prompts if we forget something. So planning ahead, making sure that you have your resume in front of you, because we forget what we had for breakfast, never mind something that we did 6 months ago, 2 years ago. We want to have that information accessible to us. In the case of some hiring managers or interviewers, they're going to ask you a question. You don't want to be rattled by that. You want to say, okay, if I can have a minute, and you can just look down or look at your resume and say, oh, yes, that's right. This was a time when we had great success. And think about this in the interview. You're there to be the star of the show, if you will. It's not about bragging. It's really underscoring what achievements, how you were helping your organization move forward, something that you did personally as a volunteer that corresponds with what you are looking for in the job search now, that meshes with the job title. For women especially, it's important to note that many women, unless they are 100% in agreement with filling all of the requirements for the position, will not even bother applying. 60% is really good enough, and you can sort of work around the other things. What's also important in job interviews is, given that the talent is pretty close, pretty equivalent on two candidates, but there's a sense that you're connecting better with the interviewer. They have a sense of you and how you're going to work in the team. This person may be the person that you're reporting to ultimately. If I get a good vibe, a really good vibe about you, and your talent is a little bit less, but again, most people can be trained, coming to the table with enthusiasm, energy, curiosity, interest, demonstrating that you've been on a trail, that you've been improving your skills, you've been learning, you've been reading, you're acquainted with other pieces of industry that might correspond with where you're going. And that's a good question. What have you read lately? What's interesting that you do? But those are all pieces that astute interviewers are going to be looking for, and see what comes next for you. But planning ahead is the most important. You're going to get the greatest confidence when you know that you're prepared. You've spoken to people about the position. And if you're in a career transition, it can feel a little bit shaky. So I'm doing this now, but I was always X. Now suddenly, if I'm Y, what does that mean? For clients that we've had in the past who are making pretty significant transitions from, let's say, litigation, but you hate the law and you want to take those skills and do something else with it. How does that work? But you want to describe yourself as, let's say, an artist. Okay, fair enough. So suddenly you're an artist, but all the people that know you as a litigator. or as a product manager or whatever that was. And so suddenly they're not going to readily see you as the newest artist, opera singer, whatever it is, somebody who has new skills and talents. They're going to tend to overlay what they know about you on and who they think you are. So when you start talking to people who you don't know, introducing yourself in this new role, it's more likely that you're going to be embraced by that. Why would I question it? You're telling me you're a product manager. You're telling me that this is the amount of experience you've had. You're really trying to break into another field and take your skill set there. Why wouldn't I be open to that? Instead of convincing somebody that you already know, who knows what you do or thinks that they know what you did, that this is something new that you're doing. New certifications. What's missing? What do I need to do? How can I be more current? What does that look like? So now that we planned ahead, what's next? Okay. Now these guys may be a lot of fun, may want to hang out with them, may not want to have anything to do with them ever. Maybe the Kentucky Derby may be appropriate for where they are and what they're doing. But when you're preparing for the job interview, you want to make sure that, given the industry, that you are appropriate. Now, if you're doing in person, it's a little bit different. And one of the things that job interview is, if it's a professional role, for women in particular, don't wear black, wear navy. That's always a killer. It's just interesting. Black sends a different message, but you want to be appropriate. However you're dressing, if it's a creative field, you want to be a little bit more casual, but you want to be someone who looks like they fit into whatever that is. Keep in mind also on a Zoom call, your background is very important. So even if you're blurring your background, you want to make sure it's better if you can have something that is, you don't have to have the screen that I have behind me, but the screen that I purchased a number of years ago is simply because it's easy, it's portable, it folds up nicely. There's nothing terrible behind it, but it's probably not what I want to convey because it could be distracting to somebody who's looking at me on a Zoom call. So why not just take that out of the conversation? We don't want you to be in a bedroom, don't want you to be in some place that's distracting. You want to make sure that, of course, you have no distractions. And that means pets, children, family members, repair people, anything. You don't want ambient noise. You don't want phones ringing in the background. You want to be completely and totally prepared when you get on your interview. So for these guys, they may be looking the part for the Kentucky Derby or some kind of great fun thing that they're going to, but certainly not unless they're applying for jobs in, I guess, garment design, could be in the fashion industry, but otherwise, and perhaps alcohol, but we're not going there today. You want to be somebody who looks the part. So where is this fish going? This fish is going from perhaps a small space to a larger space. Is that you? Is that good? Is that bad? There is no judgment about that. That is something that we can determine whether I'm more comfortable with smaller environment, larger environment, whether I'm introvert or an extrovert. But the reality is that most of us are ambiverts. It's just the way that we take in our energy. Introverts take in their energy more in a more solo fashion. Extroverts in a more, we get a lot of energy from being around people. And for most of us, we're in the middle there. So some people are exhausted by it before they start. Some people won't commit before they start because they fear being in an environment that's going to make them uncomfortable. But how do you recharge? How do you take care of yourself? Being in the process where you're in the job search, you have to be on your toes most of the time, but it doesn't mean that you have to be on all the time. You really need to be able to feel healthy, mentally prepared, and somebody who's going to take risks. And look at this little guy. He's in the air, doesn't know what's coming next, absolutely, but that's what the job search is like. You don't know absolutely 100%. You can be optimistic. It's most important to take your energy with you. It's hard to be in the job search for an extended period of time. It's hard to put yourself out there, but breaking patterns is also important, and your health is important too. It's important to not stay behind a computer all day. People will tell you this all the time, and it's easy for them to say that, but easiest thing to do is to put your sneakers on and go for a walk. Clear your head. There are many ways when we think about being productive and sitting behind a computer and doing that all day long. Very hard to do. Very hard to do it and be consistent. When you circle back and think about school days and studying for tests, studying for exams, when were you most effective? Most effective when you did it for short spurts of time. There's a way that we approach tasks One is that's the Pomodoro method, and that is about chunking time, chunking activities, whether I'm going to take care of certain things here, get it done. I'm going to take care of certain things here. I'm going to revisit. I'm going to come back to whatever I had before that I need to complete. You don't have to complete everything in 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes. For some people, that's more of a burden, but for some people, setting a timer is the best and easiest thing they can do. If it's something that's so distasteful, I don't want to do it at all, oh, goodness me, I'll set the timer for 15 minutes and then just start, just look at it. And circling back to presence and looking the part, our credibility is 55%, these are studies, 55% is based on the way you look, 38% is on the way you sound, 7% is on what you say. So think about that. What you say in an interview is important. What you don't say is also very important. Ha! Going off message. What happens when we start talking? We get nervous, we start talking, interview asks you a question, you start going and rambling. We've all done it. Or we just don't see the end of whatever the question is because there's so much information I want to get out there. I'm very excited. I want to do this. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So think about communicating almost in bullets. Sometimes it feels like you're being rude or short, but in fact, you're not. You're being precise or concise. It's thinking about being clear. Clarity is really important. Being curious is really important. Piggybacking on questions is really important. But if you feel yourself sort of going off the rails here, back to that train wreck, kind of circle in, take a deep breath, and put your hands in front of you on your desk, on your lap, wherever you're seated, so that you are in a posture where you can slow yourself down, because that's important. When we want to get things out, we speak quickly. And if the interviewer asks us a question, we want to get to the answer pretty quickly. But going off message, it's really important to try to stay as possible on message as we can. Oh. Confused? Is she confused? Don't know. Is the question that was asked by the interviewer an appropriate question? Also a good question. Getting into your personal life, not a good idea. JDP study said 59% of interviewers, that's a lot, that's a big number, 59% of interviews asked about personal lives. Those are illegal questions. Too much information. So something that's sort of as innocuous, I don't know that you have children. I don't know that you have pets. I don't know anything about you. But I can't ask about whether you have children and how that's going to impact me in this job search, whether you're going to, if this is something, do I want somebody who has young children? Do I want somebody who has no children? Do I want somebody who's thinking about having children? What does that mean in terms of daycare, in terms of sickness? Interviewers make all sorts of assumptions. So what are they looking for? And even not intentionally, but just if you happen to mention something about a family vacation, or if you mention, let's say, Santa's Village, you were in New Hampshire at Santa's Village, why would you be there if you weren't there with children? It's not so likely, so they can make assumptions, which may or may not be correct, but we want to make sure that we stay on message, that we're not getting into personal lives and getting rattled and babbling. Collect yourself, get your confidence back, because you are there as a star. You're there because someone wants to know more about you. If I am the hiring person, it's my pain because I need to put somebody in that seat, in that role, that's going to be a gain for me and a gain for you. So we're on the same page. We want to be in that place. We want to ask the questions if you're the interviewer, looking for the responses. Most of them are canned. Let's not kid ourselves. Most interviewers are not trained as well as they could be. So it's thinking about, you have to make allowances for that, but you want to take care of yourself too. You want to promote yourself without being an overt bragger, but you want to identify times and places where you were highly successful. And when we think about being successful before you even get on the interview, this is around taking time to collect yourself. Think about moments where you were most successful. That could have been where you felt the most independent, when you were riding a bicycle for the first time, learning the skill, being able to get away from home, making your world larger, being with friends, having moments where you passed your driver's test, where you did those things. And, for some of us, that's like the way back time machine. But for some people, that's more recent. Thinking about relationships, thinking about achievements, thinking about tests that where you've achieved, thinking about things that you're learning. Every day it's something new. When we ask clients, just step away from the whole process because it can be overwhelming sometimes. You need to do something that's different. Try something new, whatever it is. So in one case, let's say it's not paddleball, pickleball. Pickleball, that's like the new sport that everybody, whether you can, whether you're clumsy, whether you're a superb athlete, no matter what, the bar is very low. It sounds like just about everybody, it's some eye-hand coordination. You don't have to be a superstar at all to feel success. And the reason that it's sprouting all over the country, all ages, young, middle, senior, you name it, everybody's playing pickleball. And orthopedic surgeons are very happy about that because of the injuries that also go along with it. But let's not go there. Let's think about this. Okay, so let's take pickleball. A racket is very inexpensive. You could probably borrow a racket from somebody. And at these pickleball courts, people have multiple rackets. So it's not unusual for somebody to say, here, take mine. And you try it. So the first time, have no idea. First time, you're going to give yourself some space. Second time, you have a better idea if you choose to continue to, but at least try it. So this is the three-time rule, and it really does help. It takes the pressure off. So you try something new. Most adults will say to kids or young people, "Oh yeah, try it. Not a big deal. So what? What's the worst thing that can happen? There isn't anything that's the worst thing that can happen. You'll learn something. You'll learn more about yourself. You may meet new people. Here's another good thing to do. Pickleball, lots of people who have different jobs, people that you didn't know before. But here we are. We're still first time. Try it. Not so bad. I don't know. Kind of the pop is annoying if you're not doing it. But if you're the person with the racket and the ball, not so bad. Okay, come back the second time. Okay, some people are still there. New people, meeting new people, try it again, see if I get better at it. Thinking, oh, okay, let me try it again. Come back the third time and say, maybe I want private lessons, or maybe, oh, I hate this. I never want to do it again. I can't stand the idea of it. It's not appealing to me at all. So good enough. But you tried it. And you may have met lots of different people on the way. In fact, we had one client who went through this process with running and sneakers and running club and so forth, and ultimately joined a running club. And even though he wasn't truly a runner, except when he was in high school or maybe college, and he found that there are other people, these are people that I don't know, people who are seeing me for the first time. When people are meeting you for the first time, they accept who you are. They don't need a CV to know that they can have a conversation with you or that you're interesting. You have something to offer that's new, different conversation, and you're learning something. So it's really a good opportunity for networking, trying something new. Volunteering, also a great way to try something new. And that's something that you can also underscore in the interview process where you volunteer. It may be right in sync with whoever the interviewer is. But again, volunteering, and again, we want to make sure nothing political about what we're talking about. If there are books in the background, nothing that's going to be suggestive in any way about who you are and what you did. Even if it's art, that can be controversial for some people. So you want to have as neutral a background as you can in the interview process, in addition to not fidgeting around, being in a chair that has four legs is not going to move you around to make anybody dizzy. Again, we're back to, background. We want to be as comfortable as we can. We want to be able to practice it. So we wanted to go from confusion to, here we go again, too much information. We don't want too much information out there. We don't want to get too chummy. The interview is not an interrogation, but it's also an easy way to go down a rabbit hole about things that you don't want to share too much information. You want to be as concise as you can. You want to be as friendly as you can. You want to make sure that you smile. You want to make sure that you make eye contact. Some hand gestures are fine, but we don't want to do anything that's going to be distracting. Getting too chummy, again, we want to make sure that we remain on a professional footing, that we circle back to, because sometimes interviewers are killing time too, when they want to stay with one question and kill it. And you don't need to do that either. That's not what you're there for. Okay, Post-its. I still love Post-its for certain things. Errands, to-do lists, they're great. You can keep it on your phone if you want to, but then you find yourself sometimes looking for your phone. Who needs that? But Post-its, again, when you're interviewing, you can have a framework around the outside of your screen with reminders that you want to get back on point, that you're terrific, that all of these things that you want to underscore are still conversation that you can fit into the conversation. You want to think about, again, bullets, being expressive, being on point, staying confident. Now her getup is a little bit dated, and certainly Post-its for a lot of people would say, I don't know what she's talking about. I never use them, wouldn't buy them, not interested. But for reminders, quick reminders that are right in front of you, fantastic. Not confused, right on point. Think about the number of people that you know in your world. And I'm thinking about Jim Rohn. He says that we are the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So think about that. If you're a high performer, and you don't have to be an alpha person all the time, there's, alpha and beta, and there's a lot in between. You don't have to be high performing on everything, with everything all the time. Friendships and relationships that you have, the people that you spend the most time with, really important. Are you with doers? Are you with complainers? Are you with listeners? Are you with people who are going to support you? Also give you feedback. We don't need to have a whole lot of yes people in our lives. It's nice sometimes when things are kind of challenging, but at the same time, also people that can, support us when we're looking in a different direction. Say, yeah, I know you can do it. Knowing that you can do it, building your confidence, really important. But think about that. It doesn't mean you have to eliminate people, make a list and say, get rid of Chuck, get rid of Megan, don't need to spend time with them. But people change. So just because we had in New England, I am not from New England originally, as you can probably tell, and I've moved around a bit. People who retain relationships that are strong relationships, family relationships, friends from school, yay, hooray, that's wonderful. We're not talking about that. When you think about the 5 people that you spend most of your time with exclusively, if it's just family members, time to expand. If it's just friends, are those friends that are moving, friends that are understanding, friends that are smart? Again, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Doesn't mean that there's an IQ test for everyone that you spend time with, but think about who your personal board of directors is and how they can make the difference for you. You're in a position, because everybody is going to be moving forward, no matter what, you're going to have another job. Even if you're discouraged right now, you're going to be in a different position. And how you can make the best use of all of that, but that's time for a whole other webinar in the future. But how you can make the best use of the relationships that you have without using relationships in a way that's negative, but taking advantage of it. Who do you know? Am I presenting in a way that makes sense? Getting feedback from people who you trust, bringing people into your network, bringing people in who are different than who you are. The best advice possible for anybody is, if you hire the same people who do this, have the same personality, the same go-getterism that you do, it's likely that your company is not going to be as successful as the hiring manager who can say, I need a little bit of that A type, B type, C type. I need the person that is just flying with ideas, but I also need the person who's counting numbers, dollars, nuts and bolts, who really gets it, that doesn't let the person who's flying with ideas all the time, who could be the person at the head of the line and wants to be there. We need people who are at the back of the line, people who are in the middle, people who support each other. We all have different roles, and it's not about judgment. That's what an interviewer, a good interviewer, is looking like in fitting together. It's like a chessboard, fitting together the pieces that are going to work best with each other. Teams that like each other do far better than teams where everyone is academically, for example, really high level. So think about that. Who do you want to kind of fit in with, and not down? We're not networking down. We're thinking about, again, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I am in the wrong room. So now we haven't lost our confidence. We're still looking at work-life balance. What does that look like? How do we expand our work-life balance? Well, it's really hard when you're in the job search. It's really hard to be balanced all the time. There's a lot of judgment around that, but it really is important to get out and have sunshine. Doctors will tell you it's really important to have sun if you can, early morning sun, not sunbathing, because we don't want to make more business for dermatologists, and those surgeries that we don't need because there was too much exposure to the sun and we weren't protected well. What we want is to have a balance as much as you can. When you're in the job search and when you're interviewing, we're thinking about urgency. We don't want to convey urgency, even though I want this job. And it's important to interview. It's important to interview as much as you can without being discouraged. That's a little tricky. But the more interviews you have, the more you can sort of add to your own pieces, subtract from it. What are interviewers most responsive to when I talk about X? Is it that, or did I go off the rails on Y? Is it too much of this and not enough of that? Is there a gap? What's missing? What do I need? If I'm looking at a new role, what is it that's missing? There's a great website. It's a government website, and I think I must have shared it previously. It's O*NET, and that is occupations. Occupations, everything. You want to be a floral designer, you want to be an accountant, any of those things that you like to be, and you pull it up, O*NET. It's, again, a government site. It gives you a lot of information so that you can be prepared for, this is an industry that is moving and shaking. This is where I'd like to be in the future. There's opportunity, general salary range, parts of the country where it's most likely. If I'm flying hot air balloons, New England's probably not the best place to be 12 months a year. You want to find something that's going to support that better in other ways. So what else do we do here? We look at O*NET and you can see these are the steps that I need to take. These are the degrees or the certifications that I need. I may be qualified now. I may be able to take something that I have already and use that here, and it's going to move me forward. Work-life balance is hard, especially when you're in that place where it's still doesn't feel that great to be in the job search all the time. But if you're leaving a place where you left a toxic environment, then that's great because there's other opportunity out there. Who do I know that's working at the XYZ company? How can I get my foot in the door? How can I get an interview? Once you get the interview, yeah, you really are in the catbird seat to have gone through all of the processing and the screening beforehand. So consider yourself in a good place, tap yourself on the back, pat yourself on the back and say, you know, good for me, this is great, this is where I am. Losing confidence, easy to do, but when we think about work-life balance, that's a place where we'd like to be. Not closing. Okay, we got pretty far. Now what? So we've been smiling, we've been answering questions, we've gotten all the information that we could about the company. Now what are we doing? Not closing. That doesn't mean that you're going to accept a first offer. We're not talking about that. But it's what are the next steps? You want to affirm your interest in the position, and you want to know what the next steps are. Okay. What are interviewer killers? Interviewer killers are not being prepared with questions. If I'm the interviewer and I ask you if you have any questions and you say, no, I'm good, a very high percentage of recruiters will say then, you know, to themselves, not to you as a candidate, we're done. You want to prepare 5 to 10 relevant questions to the industry or the company in advance. Here's a good tip. I'm reading it now. One successful candidate wrote them on color-coded cards associated with the interviewer, the hiring manager, the HR director, the CEO, or the owner. And then you want to remember the thank you note. Now you can do that in email, which is fine. We don't need the formality of sending actual thank you notes, but you want to follow up with something that's contextual, what you discussed in the interview, and your interest in the job. Your very strong interest in the job, right? What's your superpower? Everyone has a superpower. Where are you the star? Where are you the rock star? Where are you the rock star? Think about this beforehand. Whether you're a writer, you're a networker, you're a speaker, you're an analyst, you're a motivator, you're an inspirer, all of this is the things that we are good at and that we can do, but we don't always value them for ourselves. We see that in other people, but when somebody says to us, gee, you're really good at X, Y, and Z, and you sort of take it for granted. And oftentimes we did that as kids because, you know, if something was easy for you, you sort of thought everybody else could do it. Not true. Hello, not true. Everyone is unique. We all have superpowers that are different. For some people, it's important to think about who or what your superpower would be. Don't know. That's something to think about. For some people, I think we asked the question as an icebreaker once, and people were talking about, let's say, I wanted to be able to fly anywhere. I wanted to be able to be invisible. So things that are, sort of interesting. And that could be a question that comes up in an interview. If you had a superpower, what would it be? I could, I could end wars. I could cure cancer. Those are sort of canned. But think about what would be sort of an interesting way to say, well, if I had a superpower, it would be to, and fill in the blanks, but practice with it. And again, thinking about the things that you're really good at. We all know what we are not good at. And if you were to ask kids, there was a study they did in Maryland, in a suburban town that was a planned community, and they asked eighth graders, boys and girls, what they were good at. And boys would say things, they could skateboarding, they knew exactly what they were good at. Some of them even laughingly would say, chewing gum is a great talent in the way they did it. But for the girls, oftentimes it was, oh, ask my friend. They were not willing to really share because it felt socially that it was unacceptable. And if we, circle ahead and say, there are a lot of myths around the job interview. There are a lot of myths around the job process being in the search and seek phase of this. Sexism is real, ageism is real, lots of things that we know, even though you can't absolutely identify them because they're maybe illegal, but we get the vibe. Lots of things are out there. So don't second guess yourself on what you're hearing because it's probably accurate. Doesn't mean that you have to respond to it in a way that's not going to serve you, but it also gives you insight into what the company is like. If the interviewer is totally off base about things, you think, well, either he or she is an outlier or this is the norm at this organization. What's the turnover rate? What does that look like? Whose position would I be replacing? Did this person leave the organization? Was this person promoted? But when you're thinking about how you can show up, what your superpowers are, if you take a moment and recognize this, if you are doing a phone interview, recommend always to stand because most of our power is in our base. So you want to stand in a way that is going to be strong, where you're connected, where you can really feel it. Another tip is a yoga pose, which is oh gosh, I just lost the name of it. Well, the power pose, where it's arms up, legs separated, and it's almost like a giant stretch. Eyes closed, looking at head up with your head towards the sky, and it really is a way to kind of get in there and be not aggressive, but to be assertive, to be strong, to really focus on who you are and what you are bringing to the table. Remember, you are interviewing, they are interviewing you. This is a job search for both parties. They want to fill it, you want to get it. What does it look like? So you really are, the connectivity here is to, yes, it's important to make a good impression just because it is anyway. But more than that, it's what are you learning? What is the information that you're gaining on the way? And take notes when you finish so that you can say, oh yeah, that's right. That's now I forgot totally about that. So think about what your superpower is, what you're really good at, especially what you're good at and how you've contributed, where you've made a difference. Volunteering, another opportunity to meet people, another opportunity to help your skills hone. Meeting new people, doing something for the sake of doing good, which is always a great thing to do. What does that look like? It could be around pets, it could be around gardening, it could be around larger organizations. Two places, if you can do it, which are really good, is be on the membership end of it. And also if there's an event, whether it's a remote event or whether it's in person. And now many more things are coming back to in person. You want to be in those spaces where you get recognition with respect to meeting other people. Doesn't mean that you're getting a gold star. You could do that certainly if you're an accountant and you're helping. But oftentimes volunteer organizations are looking for worker bees. And worker bees, yay, that's great sometimes. But if you're, and yes, we all do worker bee things sometimes because it's important. We want to move the organization forward. But if that's the only thing that you're doing and you're isolated, either you're on the phone separately, or it used to be phone banks where people were just in a giant room, but that's like, those old fundraising shows that you would see where the dollars are going up. But the reality is that, for some organizations, it's dialing for dollars, and that's what they're looking for the connections that you have. You'd like to find a way that you can participate in a volunteer organization that's going to move your skill set ahead and you can meet new people. but volunteering is always a good way to do it. Yeah, again, job search myths. Boy, everybody has a story about that, and everybody knows more than you do. But what can you change? You can change the way you look at things, and that's when the things you look at change. So that's in a perfect world. And oftentimes there are things that we can't change, but we certainly can change the way we operate with other people. We can't change other people's behavior. We can only change our own behavior, and that influences what other people do or don't do. So we've got your Olympic tool, your Olympics, because you're participating in your own job performance Olympics. You can give yourself a rating at the other end, whether you're going to be in the running for it, need to work harder. Next time, these are things that I would include or I would discard. But think about that. Think about yourself as being an Olympian and not just a swimmer or a runner. You're the director of your life. So these parts that you have control over, and we don't have control over a lot of other things, are the places where you can have the greatest influence. So we have the power pose. We have own it, which is really important if you're thinking about changing course, thinking about what's trending in the future. What do I need to know? How is AI impacting my industry? Where is there an opportunity for me to, kind of wedge myself in there and figure out, this is great. I can do this. I can do more of this. I can do less of that. We don't want to spin in our interviews. We want eye contact. We don't want to be looking up. We don't want to be looking down. We want to practice this. Do a Zoom, practice Zoom with somebody else or on your own. Phone calls, same thing. Have the conversation. You can record it. How did I sound? Did I sound confident? What are some words that you absolutely are hinge words and you want to include? All to be advised. Okay, this really helps. Conclude each day with a happiness habit. Helps everyone. State 3 great things that happened in your day. And I don't care if that is, I didn't get a flat tire today. It's, what did happen? It's, my car operated beautifully. Gas was 3 cents less than I paid for it the other day. I went to the supermarket and there weren't any long lines. I was able to connect with 3 people who could then connect me to somebody else. Who else do you know who I could contact? Who else is in the XYZ industry who might be willing to do a 15-minute, just an informational interview, just a conversation, just coffee, or a quick call? And ask the people that you interview with, that you network with, especially on your Wednesdays, as Robert said, Wednesday's networking day. What am I coming to the table with? How can I help other people? The more I can help other people, the more my network expands. And it's not that you are a 24-hour volunteer hub, but there are ways that you can think about if, helping other people is always going to come back to help me. Share those things, those 3 great things that happen in the course of the day. Share them with someone. It's great if it's in person. If you make a phone call and do it and sharing, that's another way. Putting it on your phone so you can record it for yourself and then you can review it is also great. And record and review at the end of the week or the month. Because when you think about, even in our most challenging times, when do we learn the most about ourselves and about other people? It's true. Whether it's a course that you took in school, whether you learned to be a lifeguard, whatever skills that you learned when you were discouraged. And again, circle back to the same thing. Think about those Olympians. Think about what they've gone through in order to get where they are. They've set goals, and you can have daily goals, you can have monthly goals, you can have weekly goals. For some people, it helps to keep a list, shred it at the end of the day, because it can be overwhelming to look at things that you didn't accomplish. Think about those things that you can accomplish in the course of the day and prepare. But being prepared for the interview, again, it's head up, knowing those things about myself. I'm confident because I have been successful. I have been successful, and these are the way I've been successful. I'm a collaborator, I'm a communicator, I'm a fill in the blanks, whatever it is. The skills that I'm bringing to the table, I fixed this, my team has done this, this is the end result. We got it from here to there. Sometimes when there was a failure, where it could have been better, how did I recover? That's most important. And when we're looking at this, we don't want to go into, geez, I fell apart. I fell apart. I couldn't get myself together again. I don't know what happened. I'll just wish and hope that it doesn't happen again. How can I prepare for that? Okay. Could be something as simple as, water in your house or a fire, something that happened where you responded quickly. And that's confidence. The happiness habit is truly the most important, but we've got lots of things we covered today. Don't forget, it's still summer. No matter what the calendar says, it's August 5th. The great time about summer is that people are still in a space where they're still traveling. Staffing may be less, but the people who are in there, it might be a skeleton staff. People may have more time to speak to you, more interested in speaking to you because they're kicked back. You may have more opportunity because there are barbecues and there are other outdoor events where you get to meet people, exchange ideas, who you can help. How can they contact you? Most important, you want to know how people can contact you or how you can contact them. And on that note, I think we'll return to successful moments. Think about your magic. Everybody has their own personal magic. Think about that. It's not just about spreading fairy dust on your head. It's legitimate, tangible. These are results that I've achieved. This is the person that I am. I've gotten to this place because I've done X, Y, and Z to be here. And it's, not just taking up time and space. And that's not a bad thing too. Taking up time and space on some days is just perfectly fine. So remember to give yourself a break and move forward with confidence, a little Olympian gold in there, gold, even bronze, pretty good. Something where you test yourself and you trust yourself, being confident, practicing, use the mirror, use friends or don't use friends. Sometimes friends are not so terrific to practice mock interviews with. It could be somebody, you don't want to drag a stranger, not the UPS guy, probably can't hang out that long anyway. But sometimes you can find a person, or again, within your network, somebody who you trust who can give you a few minutes and say, I'd really like to practice this. What's your feedback? But overall, it's maintaining confidence. Not so easy. Know that you're in a good place. There's a big bus with a lot of company on there, people who are in search of moving forward, being successful, helping themselves and helping each other. Robert, I hand it back to you, my friend.
So folks, let's give Maureen a big virtual round of applause for a very nice presentation. Excuse me, I need some water. And let's take, 5 or 10 minutes of audience questions. An anonymous attendee asks, can you elaborate on the different impression that black makes instead of navy blue for an interview outfit?
So it's interesting. It's the harshness of it. This came up in 2 different papers. So that navy blue is a winner every time. So if you have the opportunity, again, does this mean redoing your wardrobe? Black somehow gives the impression that it's more harsh in a way that navy blue is welcoming. And it's a funny thing about color. We all perceive color differently, but navy blue seems to be, or some, it could be midnight blue. It doesn't have to be exactly navy blue, but that is a winner in terms of whether you're wearing a suit, whether you're wearing, and again, specifically for women. And men wouldn't, it's unlikely that men would be in this conversation around black versus navy. But if there's a choice, absolutely, navy hands down. And I had to think about my own wardrobe and say, yes. And think about how welcoming it is when you're meeting somebody, what your perception is.
So Maureen, let's see, Bill asks, when finding out who you know at the company, what are some intriguing questions to ask?
To ask the person that you know at the company?
I believe so.
Okay. So when you find somebody who works at the company, you can ask them about what how they support their staff. What about education? Events that you can go to, or what their experience has been. If they had it to do over again, would they have taken the job there? If they would, what do they like most about what they do? What do they like least about what they do? What is the general culture of the company? How do they onboard people? Is this a question of, hey, you're good to, here's all the info and you're good to go? That may be good for some people because that's how they operate best. But the question would be better. This is our process, and I have found this to be most helpful for my learning style to support getting to the next steps in the best way possible and to shorten this. And it's always about asking questions. Ask questions. The person who doesn't ask a question is the person who walks away from something. without learning what they need to, and is still questioning it afterwards. Takes up a lot of time and space in your head. And then you're thinking about, gee, I should have asked. Who else can I ask? Why didn't I ask? Did I ask and it sounded too superficial? Again, these are what practice. I talk to myself all the time. I talk to myself in the car. I talk to myself in the shower if I'm preparing for something, because I know that even though it feels like it's fluent and it feels like it has a really nice flow, in my head, like your head probably, we think lots of things. But the reality is that there are some words that we can stumble over. There are some terms that are really important to incorporate, hence the decoration around your screen if you need to do that with keywords that really are expressive of the things that you're really good at, what you do best under in emergency situations, when you're under pressure. How do you operate? Do you reach out? Do you ask the questions? Do you enroll? Do you explain? How are you onboarding other people? But getting in the I don't really want to say the down and dirty, but when you can find somebody who works at the company, you want to find out, really what was the deal maker or breaker for you, and how happy are you there? Do you, is this a good match? And think about that. Typical job experience for people, again, job hopping is still, things happen. Companies go out of business. Companies merge. Roles are incidental now, where they're redundant. So because now we have two people. So if two people are doing the same thing, I don't need two people. So what does that mean? Getting recommendations in advance is really important. Having recommendations on your LinkedIn profile also is terrific. So that, when Mary and I worked well together and were able to achieve X, Y, and Z.
Rick wants to know, is note taking during an interview okay?
Depends. It depends. If you are, and again, you can also say, I'd really like to make a note of this. So you just don't want to be distracting. I think it's perfectly fine to take notes. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're focused on the notes more than you're focused on the interview, then it becomes problematic. But if you're just jotting down something very quickly, terrific. If you're in person, probably a little bit different. There's probably more leeway, because body language that I can see and read in person is still going to be different than on a screen. And that's true. So if you can get in person and you have a tablet with you, yeah, you don't want to be clicking away on a tablet either. But if you're prepared, oftentimes we'll say, bring a hard copy. I mean, even though it sounds silly because everyone has your resume, but you don't want to have to refer back to either your phone or a tablet. If you have a copy of it and you have this with a binder that you bring, it's perfectly fine. And don't ask for a pen. Make sure you bring a pen.
Georgia asks, how would you handle this? I have tons of experience and skills, but I don't hold a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree. I've only taken some courses.
That's interesting. There are a couple of things. One is, do you have a desire to gain a degree? And is that important going forward, given the industry where you've been, or if you're thinking about switching jobs? Because there are many schools that will take X number of credits from experience and apply that towards a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree. Sometimes we think that that's, really the deal breaker, and in some cases, there's no denying it is. That is absolutely, in order to do the job, this is what you have to have. So you can kind of skirt around that sometimes, but in fact, if that's a deal breaker, then there's not a whole lot you can do about it. The reality is that once you've been in the job market, especially for 10 years, and we don't want anything on a resume that's going back 20 years. And you don't want a 2-page resume if it's just a lot of repetition, but that's a whole other conversation. What you want is to be able to position yourself as the experienced person who has done this, this, and this. So even though, and the beginning of a resume, the top of the resume, again, your contact information, no home address on there, no personal address. You want your LinkedIn contact, you want your phone contact, and your name. There's also a study that was done that said, I don't know how realistic it is right now, but there was something like a 12 to 13% difference if you use a middle initial. Interesting. Does it make a difference? Could it make a difference? Somebody might look at that and say, oh, okay, it separates this person. don't know if that's so. But on your resume in particular, you want it to be something that I can read very quickly, because I'm going to scan this in under 20 seconds. Just bang, bang, bang. Is this telling me the information I need? You're going to start with a professional statement, not what I need. This is a professional statement. That's what you do. And then under that, the bullets, which would be usually 9 is good. 3 bullets, 3 bullets, 3 bullets. So going across with your skills. So, again, great communicator isn't it, but you can look online. You can look at best ways to, for formats, for templates. And I'm sure in the work that's done at the library that a lot of that is taken care of, but you want to start with a professional statement to begin with, and everything else, want it in form. So I look at it, bang it out. But to circle back to your answer about whether you fit into a particular space because your level of experience is so extensive, but it does not translate into those degrees that may or may not be important. It all depends. It depends if you can get to the interview, of course, then you can talk about your level of experience. And for most people, they don't care about the degree, don't care about what your GPA was unless you're going to graduate school, don't care about your GPA unless you're a new graduate. You know what I do care about? This is interesting. Division One, if you were a Division One athlete, or if you played on a team when you were in school, and what position you played, that's something that interviewers really like and hiring managers like. You don't want to bring that in from left field, but if there's a way to incorporate that, if you had a role there which was demanding, because the interviewer knows in it immediately. Let's say you were a Division One, I don't know, table tennis player. Okay. That tells me that you understand discipline, you understand travel, you understand being prepared, you understand 5:30 a.m. start of day, understand teamwork, understand position. So there's a lot that's unspoken. It's sort of like Eagle Scouts have a ridiculous rate of being hired. I think every astronaut was male. I don't know how it corresponded with female astronauts because Eagle Scout was not one of the possibilities. But Eagle Scouts got hired much more quickly than other candidates in the same space, if I'm given this, because there are assumptions, there are things that I already know about what it takes to become an Eagle Scout. I hope that helps. And please don't be discouraged about the degree part. If it's really important for you, and some people are going to say, I'm not going to go to my grave unless I have my PhD. Start. And there are people that will finish, and there's always at this time of year, and especially in May and June, stories about the person who's 81 who just got their high school degree, somebody who's 96 that just finished their master's degree, their bachelor's degree, their associate's degree. Is it something that's really important to you? Can you do it part-time? Can you take the scope of what you have? Because there are statements that you can make, and you can look at your life experience and how that translates into. Look at any of the community colleges, see what's available. I think in Massachusetts now, tuition is free I think for everyone or thereabouts, but check community college programs and see if there's some way that you can have a conversation with somebody who's in admissions and see how you can take your life experience and incorporate that. And you may not have far to go at all in order to get that degree. And if that's going to give you more confidence and it's going to make you a better candidate in your mind, not necessarily in the real world, but yes, you're going to be up to date. And here's the thing. When I went back for another master's, when I walked into the classroom, and this was still in person, this is pre-COVID, people thought I was the instructor. I said, no, I'm here to learn. And the participation was terrific because you are learning, you are with younger people, and you can also be with your peer group in ways that really improve confidence. And it just shapes things differently. So again, having life experience and work experience is tremendous, and that's going to take you to the next level. But if you want to polish it off more, it's up to you.
Yeah, and just a timely comment from Bill and Marie. They note that just last week, community college in the state is now free
Free.
for any resident who has never earned a bachelor's degree. So that law just went into effect last week.
Fantastic. So there you are. You're in the catbird seat. Anybody there who doesn't have, who's in that space, go for it. And you can have a conversation with an admissions counselor to tell you what is workable and what's not workable about moving forward. And
So
you
we're
may
going to
find
do, Maureen, we're going to do 2 more questions and then we're going to wrap it up.
okay.
Kim asks, what is special about preparing for a panel interview? I have a 3-person panel interview coming up in the next few days.
That's a good question. It can be confusing because the idea here is that these are people who are on board who are coming from different disciplines within the organization. So how to answer the questions and really to not be overwhelmed it's hard to not be overwhelmed because you've got 3 distinct people, probably with 3 agendas. How is this candidate going to help me? How is it going to, this is, we're back to pain and gain. Make notes for yourself again, bullet it, make sure you have your resume in front of you, and really do all you can to stay focused. And that means listening to the question, answering the question, and coming back to yourself again to prepare again. Once you get to panel, you're in a good position. So you're past the screening interview. Now they're looking at how is this person going to be under pressure? How is this person going to respond? How is this person going to take it all in, think, answer? Sometimes it may be, that's a great question. Let me, that's a great question. That's also a time killer. We always love that. That's a great question. And then you can.
Final question. We didn't quite get to all the questions, but final question goes to another anonymous attendee. If you have a long career gap for caregiving, do you mention that the person passed away so they know you are free from those responsibilities? Usually, I do not share too much as to not change the tone of the interview.
Smart. It doesn't have to come to, that's not information that you actually have to conclude with. It may at some point if you are beyond that, but you can, there was a period when I was responsible for caregiving and that is no longer my responsibility or something to that effect. But you don't have to get into what the chain of events was or if the person has passed. That's probably too much information in the beginning anyway, but you can say, I was responsible, I no longer am responsible for that role.
So folks, let's give Maureen a big virtual round of applause for a great presentation. Sorry, we're leaving a couple of questions on the cutting room floor there, but we are 10 minutes past here. So look for an email from me later today or tomorrow morning with a link to this recording, a link to the slides, a couple of handouts from Maureen. And when you close this Zoom, you're going to get a pop-up message with a quick 60-second feedback survey. Please fill that out. Let us know what you thought of today's program, what you'd like to see for future programs. And finally, just a reminder that our 50+ Job Seekers Networking Group meets this Wednesday from 9:30 to 11:30 on Zoom. And that information will be in the email as well. So, Maureen, thank you so much. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thanks again.
Thank you.